What's going on, everybody? Jesse here, and welcome back to another episode of the Blueprints to C++ tutorial series. Today's episode is going to be a little bit repetitive. We're going to go through, we're going to get all of our widgets. We're going to bind our widgets into the C++ variants. If we don't have the C++ classes, we're going to create those really quick. Then we're going to go through all those widgets, and we're going to add all the properties to them and all the specifiers to them. So that way, moving forward in the next episodes, we can just start adding all the functionality and try to get this all put back together where we were at the end of the blueprint section. All right, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. All right, so let's go ahead and start out here. You can see these 4 widget blueprints we have to create C++ classes for. So let's go ahead and set those up. And right over here in the C++ classes, select it, widgets. And I'm just going to right click, create a new class, and this will be of type user widget. I'm going to name the first one crafting ingredient image. Make sure it is in the widgets folder under the game runtime. Create class. Next up, I'm going to right click, new class. Again, this is going to be another user widget. All of them are going to be user widgets. I'll name this one crafting slot. Again, game runtime, not the plugin. Next up will be called crafting category buttons. And the last one will be called slot drag operation. So this won't be a user widget. This will be a drag drop operation. Select that one right there. Next, and call this one slot drag operation, game runtime, and create class. All right, now that we got that all taken care of, let's go ahead and start linking things together and start setting up all the members within the C++ classes. So first up here, let's go to the WBP crafting ingredients. You can see its parent is still a user widget. So let's go ahead. First thing we want to do before we start adding everything, let's go ahead and reparent these, and it will make things a whole lot easier when we start setting all the properties and stuff. So let's go here to the class settings, and under parent class, let's find the crafting ingredients image. That's a C++ class we just created. All right, there we go. And now you can tell here, we can look over here. I'm going to remove the inherited variables here. And you can see these are the couple variables we have to create for this particular widget. So let's go ahead and jump into C++ and let's add these. Okay, so I'm going to start a public section here, and I'm going to go with a T object pointer of type UImage and for declaration. And I'll call this one ingredient. Next up, we'll go T object pointer, and this will be of type UTextBlock for declare. And I will call this one amount. Now, since both of these are actual elements within the widget, we need to set them to be bound to the widget. So let's go uProperty, and we're going to make this blueprint just because we're not going to set the functionality in today's episode. There's still the functionality within the widget. And if we don't make the change, if we don't make this like blueprint read only or some sort of exposed to blueprints, then it's going to break. We're going to have compilation errors within the editor. So we need to try to expose these. Now you can come back and change this later once we put the code in if you want. But most of these properties aren't going to be bad to leave exposed to blueprints anyways. So now we'll go meta equals bind widget. Then I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, come down to the amount variable, and we will bind that one as well. So now if we compile this, we should be good. So I'm going to go ahead and close this down. Let's go jump into the editor. Now we're in here. You can see we have no compilation errors. I'll hit compile again just so you can make sure we have no compilation errors because we have the amount right here. We don't see it over here. We can go show inherited variables. It's going to show it all right in here. But we actually did not expose that to the game. We could have exposed it so we didn't have to show inherited or made them visible up here. But that's all right. We don't need to do that right at this point. I'm going to leave that inherited variables empty. So we don't have any compilation errors. So we were able to get this one all correct. So I'm going to go ahead and close this one down. Next up is going to be the crafting slot. So if we come over here now to the graph, again, select class settings, and under parent class, we're going to go crafting slot. And that's a C++ class we just created. There we go. It updated with no issues. So again, you can see in here, these are all the elements within the designer here that we have exposed. So we need to bind those in C++. And then any extra variables, we have this one here, which is a craftable item, BP craftable item, and it's within the crafting slot category. So, and we didn't set that, or we did set that there. So crafting slot. I'm actually going to change this to B because of the way I've been doing all of it. I'm going to go inventory, pipe, and crafting slot. So now when we back out of that, now we got the inventory, crafting slot, and I will do this in C++ so that we have it all within the same category there, and we don't have any duplicates. Because if you don't follow the same structure, then you're going to have duplicate members, duplicate properties. So by doing it like this, if we end up doing the exact same category here, then we won't have multiple. We won't have the, otherwise this would say craftem item 0, and then we'd have to go through and replace all the variables with the new one. So let's not do that. Let's go ahead and compile that just to make sure everything's set, and then go back into C++. All right, so let's go ahead and create the properties for the crafting slot header file here. Start off with a public section, and I'm going to go tsoft class pointer. This is going to be type uCraftable base item for declare. I'm going to call this craftable item. Next up, we're going to go F. Actually, we'll come back to that one in just a minute. Let's start a private section and go T object pointer, U button for declare, and we will call this craft button. Next, let's go T object pointer. It's going to be U circular throbber for declare, and we will call this throbber. T object pointer, U image. I'm going to call this thumbnail. Next up, T object pointer, U text block, and we'll call this one craft amount. T object pointer, another U text block, and we'll call this one item name. And then I'm just going to write a comment in here for me. I'm going to go to do write function definitions. Now let's create some U properties for these. Up here in the public for the tsoft class pointer, let's start with this one. We'll go U property, visible anywhere, blueprint read only, give it a category. Now remember, we gave it the category there within the blueprint. So we're going to go category, inventory, pipe, crafting, slot. And I'm going to give it a metadata equal to expose on spawn. And we're going to go equal in quotes true. Now we'll be able to access this within C++. This isn't relevant for C++, but if we end up spawning this slot within blueprints, then this will give us the pin on the node to enable to add to this when we spawn the item. So that's what we want. We want this expose on spawn equals true. And then let's go down here to the private section, add some U properties here. We'll go U property, blueprint read only, meta equals bind widget, and allow private access. And then I'm just going to copy this, and let's go ahead and just paste it for the rest of these. All right, so one last thing we got to do here that I didn't point out when we were within the blueprint. So let's open up the editor again. And in here, you're going to see we have an event dispatcher called item pressed. We're calling it right here on the click event. So we're going to have to create this delegate here. So that's not too difficult to do. So let me try to explain how this all works. Let's jump back over into the C++ header. Okay, so I'm going to come up here under where we have the class declaration. I'm going to get rid of this little stupid comment right here that always comes in. And right above the U class is where we're going to put our declaration. So this is where we declare all our delegates. So we're going to go declare, and this is going to be in all caps because it is a macro. Declare underscore. Now I'm going to type, there's several different variations here. Pretty much all you have to do to declare a delegate is right here. That's it. So you don't need any parameters. You come in here, you give the delegate a name. So it should start with an F, go F, name, whatever you name you want for your delegate. So this is the bare minimum you need for a delegate. Okay. So, but we're going to need a little bit more than that. So let me kind of explain what we're going to do right here. I'm not going to go over all the use cases. You can look that up yourself, but I'm going to show you what we're going to do and tell you why we're doing it here. So we got declare, always starts with declare. Now we're going to go dynamic. Now what dynamic does, this is going to allow us to use it within blueprints and expose it and do what we need to in blueprints if we need to. So you don't need to do dynamic if you don't want to have this accessible within blueprints, but I'm going to make it dynamic underscore. Now we're going to go multicast. Now what multicast does, this allows us to have more than one event or function hooked up to this delegate. If we didn't use multicast and we just did a simple old delegate here, then we can only ever have one function or event bound to this delegate. And at any point, if we added a second function to be bound to this delegate, it would take precedence over the first. So whichever one takes, only one will ever have precedent. So because of this, you can do that. if you want to, and there are going to be use cases for that. But this one, even though right now I think we're only going to have one delegate for this, or one cast for this, one function for this, I'm still going to use multicast, so that way it's kind of future proof. It's a little bit of an overhead if you use multicast and you don't really need it, but I'm not too worried about it at this point. So multicast underscore delegate. There we go. So that's how the full list that we're going to do here, except for now we need to see, you can see within my list here, we can add parameters. You can't add infinite amount of parameters. It looks like we've got 9 listed in there. So you can have up to 9 different parameters in your delegate. We're going to go ahead. We only need one parameter here that we're going to pass through. So if we go back into the editor real quick, you can see here, we've got one parameter called craftable item, and it is of type, well, right here, this shows type BP craftable item class reference. So let's go ahead and we're going to fix this. We're going to make this of craftable item type. So jump back in here to the C++, and so we need one parameter. So go underscore, and I'm going to find one param, and I'm just going to enter it right there. So you can see the little help pop up right here. So now we need to give the delegate a name. You should start your delegate with an F. So I'm going to call mine F item pressed delegate, comma. Now we need to give it the parameter that we want to pass in. The parameter is going to be a T soft class pointer, and it's going to be of type U craftable base item. And then now the last thing we need to do is we need to give a name to the parameter. You only need to do this if you haven't marked as dynamic. If this wasn't dynamic, you wouldn't have to give it a name, but because this is going to be in blueprints and there's going to be this pin exposed for this, it wants a user-friendly name to give to it. So I'm going to call this one craftable item. And then because of the full dynamic multicast here, it does need a semicolon at the end. Not all delegates need a semicolon at the end, but this one in particular does. So just if you don't know when to have it, just look. Without it, you're going to get the red squiggly lines on the U class. And then that's just going to tell you that you need the semicolon right there. All right, there we go. We got the full delegate set up here. So now let's go ahead and create a property for it. So under the public section here, we need to create a variable for this. So I'm going to call this, it's going to be of type F item pressed delegate. That's the name we just gave it right there, right? So we're making it of this type, and we're going to call it item pressed. All right. So now what we need to do is we need to expose this so it is exposed into blueprints. So again, you only need to do this U property if you're going to expose into blueprints. If this is not a dynamic multicast delegate, or if it's not a dynamic delegate and you don't want to expose this into blueprints, then you don't need to do this U property. It is fine just like it is, but we're going to do that. So U property, we're going to make this one visible anywhere. So that way we can see it within the list on the left-hand side there. We're going to go blueprint assignable. So this means that we can assign this delegate within blueprints. So again, it's for multicast delegates only. And then lastly, in order to call it, we need to go blueprint callable. And there we go. So now if we hit compile and if we got all this correct, then we should be good to go. So go ahead and build it. All right. I was successful. So let's go ahead and open this back up. And in here, I don't see any compilation errors. I'm going to compile again anyways. And we don't see the event dispatcher here. And actually, we don't even see all of our variables here. So let's go ahead and show inherit variables. So now if we come here, you can see under crafting slot event dispatcher, here is our items pressed. We could drag that out. We can call it. And it's the same thing we have right here. So we could take this if we wanted to, take and plug that in. It's the exact same thing. I'm just going to delete that though. And then remember what I said by setting the category earlier before we came in here to what I wanted it to be. So if we come up here into inventory, crafting slot, and there's our craftable item right there. So it didn't duplicate this craftable item variable on us. And if we open up crafting slot here, this is just the default. These are all of the bound widget components that we have added. Now we've got this one right here. Did we add this slot BG border? Jump over here into the designer and look, slot BG border. We have it here. We did not add this. We did not bind this into C++. So let's go ahead and do that really quick here. So we come back down here into the private section, go T object pointer. This is going to be type U border for declare it. And we will call this, it was called slot BG underscore border, copy this U property, paste it in there, and let's go ahead and compile it now. And jumping back into the editor, you can see now it is gone from there and it is moved up here with the rest of them. So now it is exposed like it was meant to be. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next one, which is the WBP crafting category button. And in here, head over to the graph, class settings. Let's set its parent to be the crafting category button. That's the C++ class we created. Compile it, make sure we didn't get any problems. So again, you can see here, if I remove the inherited variables, you can see what we have. We've got one category, or excuse me, one variable called category. It is of type enum. We need to create this enum, which we will do right now, right after we leave this one. So we have that, and I'm going to put this into a new category like I did with the last one, inventory, pipe crafting button. There we go. And again, that's the E item category. So we'll recreate that. And then we got two elements within the designer called category button and category text. So one's obviously going to be a button. The other's going to be a text. So I'm going to open up the content drawer and I'm going to come over here, and inside of the plugins, we want this enumeration to be inside of the plugins folder because it's important to the inventory system itself. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to select the C++ classes, my folder here, and then right in my base folder, I'm going to right click, go create new class. Now there is no enumeration default class that we choose. So we're going to choose none in an empty C++ class, select next, and I'm going to name mine crafting enums. Now we're going to put, we've got, I think 3 different enumerations right now that we have in our system. We're going to put this into one enum, and I'm going to call it crafting enums. Now I'm going to make sure that it is within my plugin runtime. There we go. And I'm going to put it in a folder called enums, and then go ahead and select create. So now we're going to come over here and we're going to have this error like we usually get, but we don't really care about this. I'm going to open up the solution explorer right here. We don't need the CPP file for this. So I'm just going to close this out. Then I'm going to come over here into my new folder, enums. I'm going to find the CPP file and I'm going to just delete it. There we go. Now we don't have that one. So we don't need it. I'll show you how we're going to set up the crafting here in just a second, but let me show you the crafting in case you need a reminder. Look back into the survival folder here. Let's go up to our enums crafting. You can see we've got the craftable item names, craftable benches, and the item categories. I'm not going to open these up and remind you what's in here. You can go ahead and take a look at them, but these are the ones we're going to emulate. We're going to put it into one file, and they're all related to crafting. So that's why I'm putting them into the single crafting folder, is that's what they're, or a file is because that's what they're used for. So let's go ahead and jump back into the IDE. Okay. So now in here, I'm going to delete everything except for the include. And then also remember that every header file needs to have the include generated file. So this is crafting enums.generated.h. So we got that in there. So now for an enum, we're going to put in the macro uenum, and this is going to be blueprint type. And as you can see there, it exposes this enum as a type that can be used for variables in blueprints. Now we're going to go enum class, and now we need to give it a name. So I'm going to start mine. That should be started with the letter E to signify that it is an enum. So E crafting bench colon is going to be an unsigned integer of 8 bits, and then curly brackets. Now the first one we're going to call player, next small bench, large bench. And then the last one I'm going to add here, I'm going to add a crafting bench underscore max. This just kind of this allows some calls in C++, and it just kind of helps it out to know how many, what the maximum files are within the enum. And there's different function calls that you can have if you have the max in there. Nothing that we're going to use right now, but it's a good practice to be into to have the last one there. So now, right now, crafting bench underscore max will show up as a choice we can have. We want to make this hidden. So I'm going to go umeta all in caps because it's a macro. I'm going to type hidden. That's how we do an enum in C++. So now we can just keep adding to this. This is the same kind of method that you can do with the struct as well. You can have multiple structs on the same file as well. But we're just going to do the enums here. So we go uenum, make it blueprint type, enum class. I'm going to call this one eCraftable item names, unsigned integer 8-bit. And inside the curly brackets, we're going to go none, which will be the default value, red berry bread, basic bandage. And just so we have different choice, we don't actually have these yet, but I'm going to go pizza. This allows us to be able to do just some testings of if we want to do some extra testing within the engine. Pizza, and I'm going to go Band-Aid, comma, and then come in here, craftable item names underscore max, umeta, and hidden. And lastly, let's go uenum. This will be blueprint type, enum class with the name e-item category, uint8. First choice will be none, food, tools, health, building, weapons, and then item category underscore max, umeta, hidden. And there we go. We have all our enums now set up, and this will not be seen inside of blueprints because we don't, or in our content drawer within the editor, because we don't have the CPP file. You don't see the header files in the content drawer there. However, because we made these blueprint type, if you go to create a variable and you want to make it of type enum, you can start to type in the name and you will have access to each of these to create a variable of this type within blueprints. That's why we added the blueprint type right there. And then just as a reminder, let's jump back into here, the craftable category button. We've got the crafting button with a type category in here, or crafting button category, e-item category. And we got the two elements here. And we also have another event dispatcher, and the signature on this event dispatcher is right here. It's called button category. It is of type e-item category. So you can see over here down in the details, we've got the e-item category as the signature. So let's go ahead and put that into C++. So let's go ahead and declare our delegate first. There's going to be one parameter for this. So let's go declare dynamic multicast delegate one parameter. That's the one I want. So I'm going to select that one. Mine popped up because I recently used that one last. So that's why it's picked it for me there. I'm going to call this F category selected delegate, and its parameter is going to be of type E item category. And we're just going to forward declare it. And the name of it will be button category, and we need to add the semicolon afterwards. All right, so I head on down here now. I'm going to put in a public section, and the first one I'm going to put in here is going to be a T object pointer of type U material instance. I'm going to call this one craftable button material. Now you may be asking yourself, why are we putting in a material instance? That wasn't one of the variables there. Well, one of the things we're going to do with this crafting button is I'm going to show you guys how to style things in C++. I've said before that it's probably best left to be done inside the editor. It's a lot easier in there, but I still want to show you guys how to be able to do these things so that way you can have a little bit more control over it. So where do we get in this? Why are we creating this craftable button material? If we go back into the editor really fast, you're going to see here that in the crafting button, if we come over here to the different styles, we go normal, you can see the image. It's actually a material. It's a material instance crafting button right there. So we need to be able to take that and put that as the image in here. So that's the point of doing this. If we come over here to the graph really quick, you're going to see here in the set active state, we're going to do all this in C++ in due time. So we just need to set up for that. So that's why you don't see that we have the button here for the craftable button material for the material instance. We're going to need it for the C++. So that's why we're creating it in there. So let's head back over to CPP. Okay. So let's add the next property here. We're going to go e-item category, and I'm going to call this category. I'm going to do a protected section, and I'm going to go T object pointer, U button, and I'm going to call this category button, T object pointer, U text block, and I'm going to call this category text. Again, remember, keep the same names and we'll be able to easily override the variables that are within the existing blueprint. And then just as a reminder for myself, I'm going to go to do, and then I almost forgot here in the public section, let's go F category selected delegate. We need to create a variable for our delegate. I'm going to call it category selected. There we go. And you'll see how to use these, how we're going to call them and all that stuff and bind them later on down the road, but we just got to have them in here for now. So let's go ahead and give some U properties these things. And for the first one, the material instance, make it a U property, edit anywhere. Now, obviously we will have to set this inside of blueprints. So we need to make it blueprint. We can make it blueprint read and write. I'm going to give it a category of inventory, crafting, category, button, material. Sure, why not? That's a little longer convoluted. For the next one, we'll go uProperty, visible anywhere, blueprint read only, meta equal expose on spawn equal to true. And then for the delegate, we don't need any uProperty for that. Head down to the category button, uProperty, blueprint read only, meta equals bind widget. And I'll just copy that one and paste it down here for the next one. And if we got it correct, if we hit build, we should not get any errors. All right, so it built fine, but when we come in here, you're gonna see we've got a compilation error, and it's about that enum. So we've got some weird name right here. This is the enum. This is actually what it is right here. We need to just go ahead and delete these. And actually, we may not even hook this all back up, but let's go ahead and just delete these right here. I'm going to delete the enum to string as well because we're going to have to rebuild that. But I can't delete this one right now. We compile it. There we go. It changed its name. It wanted to change to category 0. It just showed as a duplicate. So because I deleted it now, or because I deleted them out here and recompiled it, I can now do it out there. So if I take the one I created, I can plug it in there. And then again, I can come down and plug it into that one. And of course, the reason why this isn't matching up is because we actually didn't expose this. This is the old one that we had in here, the E_item category enum. So that's why we can't match up our new one, is because it doesn't have the underscore in it. So if we jump back here, and we do need the uProperty for our category selected. So let's go uProperty. Let's go visible anywhere, blueprint assignable, and blueprint callable. And there we go. Go ahead and build it again. And now when we come over here, you're going to see it disappeared from down here. Let's close this appearance. We open this up. Now we have it here. And if we hover over this one, you're going to see now that changed. There's no underscore between E and item category. So now we could take this one, plug it in there. There we go. So now if we compile it, we shouldn't get any errors. Perfect. So other than fixing up these category buttons here, the rest of it works out pretty well. All right, so now let's go to the slot drag operation here. And in here, you can see we've got just the under drag slot as a variable. It is a reference to a WBP inventory slot type. So we're not going to have access to the WP. This is actually going to end up breaking a little bit when we come in here. We're just going to end up disconnecting this functionality. It doesn't matter. We're going to come back and reprogram it all in just a little bit. But I'm going to set this up. This is such a small one. I'm not going to go through the trouble of having to come in here and select what the blueprint is. We may not ever create a blueprint of this. We may end up destroying this WBP slot drag operation, but we're going to put all this in C++. So we'll end up having to, as a matter of fact, while we're here, I'm just going to disconnect all this right now because none of this is going to work anyways. It doesn't work right now because we don't have anything showing up to the screen. So let's go ahead and the slot drag, we need the under drag slot variable here. It is of item slot type. And let's go ahead and change this. You can see the parent class is a drag drop operation. Class settings. Let's change that to slot drop. Slot drag operation is the one we created. All right, it went over just fine. So now let's head over to C++. This will be quick. I'm going to create a private section. I'm going to go T object pointer, U inventory slot. I'm going to call this under dragged slot. And I believe that's a little bit of a different spelling. I think I had under drag slot in the blueprint, but again, that doesn't matter. I'm just differentiating the two here. And then I'm going to throw another one up here that we didn't have before because we will end up needing it. It will be a T object pointer. We need it to the A main HUD. Just forward declare it. And I'll call this HUD. Let's give it a couple uProperties. This one, I just want to make sure this is exposed to the garbage collection system. So I'm not gonna give it any values here. I just want to expose it by doing uProperty. Same thing with this other one. Just want to expose them, make sure that they can be garbage collected if needed. Okay, because we're going to have so many different slot drag operations coming and going. We want the system just to kind of use it. If it's old and it's there and it can use it, then it'll reuse it. These pointers, if not, then it'll just throw them away. But we want to ensure that we have them exposed to garbage collection. All right, and let's go ahead and compile that. We shouldn't have any issues now. All right, so we come in here and we have no issues. We can compile it just to confirm. No issues. Of course, we disconnected everything here, but not too big of a deal. You're not going to see our variable over here because we didn't expose it. We didn't expose either of them. Not too big of a deal. So let's go ahead and open up our inventory window. So now in our WBP inventory window, you can see we got a few things exposed here. We can see it better in the graph. we come over, I'm going to turn off show inherited variables. You can see we got a display name and an inventory box that we got to expose for the designer. And we don't have any dispatchers or any other variables within here. So this one should be fairly easy. Let's go ahead and reparent this class. Come down here, user widget. We're going to go inventory window. Okay, compile it just to make sure we got no problem. All right, let's head over into the C++. All right, now the inventory window.h. I'm just going to add the couple classes, the other couple pointers we need. T object pointer, U text block. We're going to call this display name. Next one will be a T object pointer of type U wrap box, and we'll call this inventory box. Couple U properties, visible anywhere. And we don't actually have any code using this in blueprints right now, but we will still give it a blueprint read only in case in the future we want to have access to this. And then we will do meta. Again, make sure your names all match up. Otherwise this bind will throw an error. Bind widget. And then we're getting the error there because we did not specify I want this in the public section because it defaults to private. So without the public, it's going to think it's private, in which case we would need to add the meta allow private access, but we don't want that. So now let's go ahead and copy this one and do the same thing for the inventory box. And there we go. Build it. We shouldn't have any problems. We can move on to the next one. All right, hit compile. And because I turned off show inherited variables, we're not going to see it. So show inherited, inventory window, and there's our two variables we just created right there. So perfect. No problems here. So let's move on to the next one, which will be the crafting window right there. WBP crafting window. And in this, what do we have exposed here? We have a categories and an index box. And the primary HUD, we're going to change this up just a little bit because we're not using a primary HUD. So we'll change some of the variables as we need to. The bench, we got an enum of the crafting benches. We got an array of the E item category type and an active category, which is just a single E item category type. No dispatchers, no local variables. So looks like we should be good. And right now we've got a compilation error on this. And we're trying to bind to event earlier when we changed some of our delegates. This signature changed. So we're just going to go ahead and disconnect this. Actually, we'll just go ahead and delete this for now and compile it. Might have to disconnect this binding right there. Yep, still got to disconnect this. So let's just disconnect that for now, compile it. And we got a second bind event. So I'm just going to disconnect this one for now and plug that straight in that way. Just bypass this. And there we go. No more errors. So remember, we changed the signature of these, some of these values here. So we're not going to worry about this right now. We just need to leave the most of it intact. So when we rewrite our functions in C++, we've got a point of reference and we can make the adjustments in C++ as we need to. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump over there now and let's add these variables over there. All right, so I'm going to add a private section, and first property, I'm going to go E crafting bench for declare. I'm going to just call this one bench. Next, I'm going to create a T array of type E item category. I'm going to call this one categories list. And the next one I will call E item category and call it active category. Let's go ahead and give these some U property. Visible anywhere, blueprint read only. And I'll go ahead and copy that. And I forgot, of course, the meta equals allow private access equals true. Next, we'll go T object pointer, U vertical box. Call this one categories. T object pointer, U wrap box, call this item box. This one we're going to do a T subclass of type U crafting category button, and we're going to call this one category button class. Now we're going to need to access the blueprint version of this in C++. So that's why we're creating this here. So we'll need to ensure that this gets set in blueprints when needed. And then another T subclass of, this will be of type U crafting slot, and I'll call this crafting slot class. Same thing applies as I just said, and we'll need to make sure we set this inside of blueprints. And then let's go ahead and give some U properties. This will be a U property blueprint read only, meta equals bind widget, and allow private access equal true. Next one, U property, and this one can actually be the same as this one. So let's just go ahead and copy. And then for the category button class, let's go U property, edit anywhere, blueprint read only, category equals inventory crafting defaults, comma meta equals allow private access, and then copy this and we can just use it for this other one as well. All right, so now if we build it, we shouldn't have any issues. All right, compile it just to confirm, and we got no issues. So everything matches up perfectly. We got no duplicate zeros here. Otherwise, if we enter the wrong names, we'd have bench underscore 0 or whatever. We'd have duplicates there. And then this one we didn't reproduce, so that's still the original. Everything looks good. So let's move on to the next one, which will be the crafting info window. All right, so there's a lot going on with this one. So let's jump over here to the graph. And in here, you can see we got a bunch of stuff that we end up having to expose in here. So I'm not going to go over each one of them, but we don't have any event dispatchers. So let's just go ahead and run over into C++. All right, so in here, let's go ahead and add a protected section and t-object pointer, uimage. You guys should have this by now. Uimage, big image is what I called it. T-object pointer, utext block, amount when crafted, t-object pointer, text block, call item name, t-object pointer of a uGrid panel. We'll call it ingredient panel, t-object pointer, ubutton, craft button, t-object pointer, uslider, and we'll call this amount slider. Again, these are the same names we had in blueprints. T-object pointer, utext block, amount text, and a t-object pointer of a multi-line editable text box. Call this one item long description. Now we need an int 32. I'm going to call this one craft amount, and I'm going to default it to 1. All right, so now let's add a T subclass of, it'll be type of U crafting ingredient image, and I'll call this crafting ingredient image class. We need access to the blueprint version of this, so we're creating this so we can access it in C++. All right, before we give these all properties, let's go private t-soft class pointer of type uCraftable base item. I'm going to call it craftable item. Then I'm going to go t-array of type bool. I'm going to call this b has ingredients, and then a t-map of type t-soft class pointer of ubase item. And the second part of it will be, or the key of it will be, or the value will be the int 32. And I'll call this one ingredients. All right, let's give these all U properties now, and they're all pretty much going to be the same. So let's go blueprint read only, and we'll go visible anywhere, and meta equals bind widget. So let's just go ahead and copy this one and set it on down. And then down here for the int32 craft mount, we actually want to make this one a little bit differently. Let's go U property, and I want to go meta equals clamp min equals 1 and clamp max equals 10. Now this is tied to the slider, so I don't want to be able to craft any less than 1, and I don't want to be able to craft any more than 10. So that's what this is tied to. And because of that, I'm not going to expose this. I don't want to change this in blueprints. I want to have this hard set in the C++. That way designers, even though I'm the only one designing it, it's not going to be able to be changed in blueprints. You have to deliberately come in here and know what you're doing to be able to change that. And then lastly for this one, let's go U property, edit anywhere, blueprint read only, and that should do it for that. And we don't need any other U properties for these at this point. All right, so now if we build this, we shouldn't have any issues. Cross our fingers. All right, so don't see any errors here. Hit compile, and everything seems to be pretty good. Show inherited variables, and I don't see any duplicates or anything in here. Call that good, and there we go. We have our new variables here as well as the existing ones. So the one last thing I want to go ahead and set here for the widgets will be the inventory slot. So set the properties in that one. And then that should pretty much set us up for the rest of them. All we need to do is add the functionality. So let's go ahead and go into the graph. So there's a lot here kind of going on with this one. But again, we're just setting the properties in here. So that's what we have. And we don't have any event dispatchers, nothing too special about this one. So let's go ahead and jump over to C++. All right, so let's go t-object pointer, border, uborder, call this one slot bg underscore border, t-object pointer, utext block, item name. Next one is going to be of uimage, call this thumbnail, utext block called amount text. And I need to come up here. Let's put this in a public section, by the way. And this one will go f inventory item. And we're going to forward declare this. It's just the struct. And we'll call this item. And then let's add an f inventory item. And I actually want to add this one to an include. It's just a struct, so it's not going to be too big of an overhead if this is included multiple times. Again, it's just the struct. So we're going to get errors with it if we end up just forward declaring it. So add it to the include, then come down. Let's create a private section. And in here, we will go TObject pointer of type uInventory window. And I'll call this one owning window. And then tsoft object pointer, not the class, make sure it's the object, uInventory slot. And I'll call this left click slot, and I'm going to initialize it as a null pointer. And then let's go ahead and add some properties for these. Property visible defaults only, blueprint read only, and meta equals bind widget. And we can do this for all of them but the inventory item one. So go ahead and copy that. And then for the inventory item, I'm going to go uProperty. Let's go visible anywhere, blueprint read only, meta equals expose on spawn equals true. And then for these last ones, we're just going to make them uProperty so they're exposed to the garbage collection system, but we don't need any specifiers for them. And there's a couple other properties I forgot. Let's go TObject pointer, and it's going to be of uInventory slot, and we're going to call this payload. Next, we're going to need a TObject pointer of uSlot drop a drag operation. I'm going to call this drop operation equals null pointer. I'm going to initialize this as a null pointer. And I named this drag operation here. I should have named it drop operation here because that's how I did it in everything else. So that's why this says drop operation is, but it's same drag drop. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to change the name of this. I'm just going to leave it where it's at. And then TObject pointer of uInventory slot. And I'm going to call this under slot. And lastly, TObject pointer of type a main HUD, and I'm going to call this HUD. And again, just like we did before, let's just give these uProperty. And now if we build it, we should be good to go. So now if we come in here, hit compile, shouldn't get any errors. We have all our variables and things over here. Not a problem. That's it. So I hope you guys found this useful. I know there's a lot of repetitive work in here, but now that we went through and we got all the properties laid out into our widgets, we should be able to come through and start adding all the functionality to it and getting it to where we need to be. I found it was probably just going to be a little bit easier this way. So I hope you guys found this useful. If you did, please do me a favor, hit that like button, go down and subscribe while you're down there liking it. If you got any questions, leave me a comment or come on over to the Discord, message me over there. And until the next one, peace.